Welcome to world history. So, we finally made it to the end. With Napoleon defeated and captured, the victorious allies need to figure out how to try to put Europe back together from these 2 decades of chaos known as the French Revolution. So, let's get started. Your goal is, by the end of today, you should be able to identify the goals of the different countries at the Congress of Vienna, analyze the goals and positions of a guy named Clemens von Metternich, who we're going to be very familiar with here, and look at the steps taken by Metternich to keep the peace in Europe and to prevent another French Revolution from plunging the continent into decades of war. So let's see how it goes. The Congress of Vienna was an attempt to put all of Europe back together after the chaotic years of the French Revolution. Obviously, France had conquered most of Europe, had tried to set up sister republics, overthrown kings, put in new law codes, and basically made a huge nuisance of themselves everywhere. And so the Congress of Vienna is a meeting of all European countries that matter in order to try to put all the pieces back together. And it's noteworthy that France is actually invited to the table. French Foreign Minister Talleyrand gets France an equal seat at the table, basically arguing that, yeah, this whole revolution thing got away from us, but you do want a stable France, right? So you need to give us a seat here, and we'll try to prevent this stuff from happening again. And so the Congress of Vienna kicks off with the goal being, again, stability and peace. The whole thing is thrown into chaos, though, when Napoleon escapes from his exile in Elba and goes on another rampage. The French government sends an army to try to capture Napoleon, but when the army gets there, they simply defect to his cause, and now the former French Emperor Napoleon is the current French Emperor Napoleon, and he's back in power. So Napoleon goes on one last-ditch effort to save his empire and to try to keep France as the sole power of Europe. Obviously, the rest of the powers of Europe are not just going to let this happen, and so the alliance gets back together, and at the climatic Battle of Waterloo, the Duke of Wellington, Arthur Wellesley, is able to defeat Napoleon. And Napoleon's last-ditch attempt to stay in power is over. He is again captured, but this time exiled so far out in the Atlantic Ocean that no one will ever see him again. And so with that, Napoleon is finally defeated, and the rest of the powers of Europe can go on with their trying to put the world back together. So let's introduce the architect of this whole new system, Clemens von Metternich. Metternich was Austrian royalty, and his basic goal was to prevent another French Revolution, arguing that these revolutions created chaos, lots of death and destruction, and basically we need to stop this stuff from happening again, so we're going to surround France with powerful countries and create a system of alliances. So if any country starts getting too big, the alliance of other countries will come in and put them down. So if you can keep this balance of power within Europe, you can prevent future wars. The balance of power envisioned by Metternich involved creating alliances of countries and building states around France in order to stop them from being able to go on another rampage. And so we're combining together some of the parts of England into one country. We're creating this new thing called the German Confederation, which is going to sort of be a check on Napoleon from this side. We're combining together Italian kingdoms to be a check. And we're basically trying to make sure that no one country can become as powerful as France became and go supernova and try to take over everyone else. This system is going to hold in Europe for almost 100 years until it finally falls apart right before the First World War. In addition to trying to create and keep a balance of power that would prevent any one nation from becoming too powerful, Metternich proposed the Holy Alliance of Russia, Prussia, and Austria. These 3 monarchies would agree to rule by Christian principles with the idea that if these rulers of these countries start acting like enlightened despots and make their people happy, then it would stop any sort of revolutionary movement, and they'd be able to turn the clock back and basically prevent stuff like this from happening again. So the Holy Alliance, if these rulers rule effectively, they're going to stop revolutions from starting before they even begin. The other component of this was something called the Concert of Europe, which is an alliance of all the anti-French powers, with the goal being to crush revolutions before they begin. So rather than in the French Revolution, where more or less all the powers of Europe sat back and said, well, let's see what happens in France. Maybe we can benefit from this. Instead, next time, all of them are going to invade immediately, crush the French Revolution, or crush any future French Revolution before we get to this situation where France conquers and subdues all of Europe. So if they join together to strangle these revolutions before they get big, then they can prevent future revolutionaries from creating these superstates and plunging all of Europe into war yet again. And finally, France. So who's going to rule France in the aftermath of this whole French Revolution thing? Well, it turns out the brother of Louis XVI, Louis XVIII. And so they're going to bring back the Bourbon dynasty. Here is Louis's brother, Louis. And so he's going to take on the mantle of Louis XVIII. And he's going to try to pretend like none of this French Revolution stuff ever happened. Which, man, that takes a lot of guts to step back onto the throne after your brother was killed and your country was completely rewritten, and then come back and try to say, well, we're going to pretend like the last 30 years didn't happen, and I'm going to claim to be an absolute ruler chosen by God again. So Louis XVIII is going to basically close his eyes, learn nothing, and pretend like the French Revolution never happened. So we'll see how that's going to go for him. But unfortunately, we'll have to find that out next semester, because this brings us to the end of our content here. So hopefully you can identify the goals of the different countries at the Congress of Vienna, look at the goals of Metternich and assess how successful we think these are going to be, and look at the steps taken by Metternich to stop stuff like the French Revolution from happening again. Thanks for listening.